meeting, and it got me out just a little bit late. So today we're going to open the hearing on House Bill 2386, establishing requirements for the payment and reimbursement of dental services by a dental profit plan. The first proponent we have up is Kevin Robertson, Executive Director with the Kansas Dental Association. Welcome to committee, Kevin.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I am Kevin Robertson, Executive Director of the Kansas Dental Association. Appreciate the opportunity to be here to appear before you today. Of course, last Tuesday we were here, and that ended up being an interesting discussion on the Apex bill. So we're glad to be here today in person. Dr. Rivas and Dr. Jill Jenkins, who will be testifying as well, were not able to come back today. They were here last Tuesday, but they will be testifying remotely here a little bit later on. So House Bill 2386 is a bill that has had quite a bit of discussion within the dental insurance community. So it was originally an NCOIL template. It was, that's the National Council on Insurance Legislators. There were several issues in that bill, but initially, or that concept, that template initially, but when it was all put together and the insurance industry and the American Dental Association finalized their agreement with NCOIL, there were three issues that remained in the bill or in the template, which is before you today. And those three issues have to do with prior authorization of dental claims or dental payment. It also has to do then with network leasing of dental networks. And then the third issue has to do with the virtual credit card. And that's a concept of the way that insurance network providers are paid by the insurance carrier. So I'll talk to you a little bit about those three issues. I will tell you that moving into this session, or as we're talking with the bill with our largest insurance carrier, Delta Dental of Kansas, the state's largest dental insurance carrier. We came to an agreement with them that we would not pursue the prior authorization section of this particular bill. That's Section 3. So my comments will have to do with Section 2 and 4. Section 3, the prior authorization, is something that the Kansas Dental Association and the dentists in the state are still very interested in at some point in time. That's the concept that, hey, if a prior authorization for a service in a dental office is requested and that dental carrier approves that particular treatment plan, then it should be paid at the end with regard to different issues. There were different ways to get out of it. But we're not going to pursue that, so we'll move forward with the other couple of concepts. So Section 2 has to do with network leasing. So that's the idea. What happens with a dental contract is if I'm a network provider, I'm a dentist, so I join a network. So I don't want to single out anyone, so let's just say with a dental carrier, oftentimes that network will be leased or sold to another third-party insurance carrier. So what does and can and does happen with a dental provider is they will have a call at some point in the future from a patient who has an insurance product that they have no idea that they've ever signed up for. They have no idea what the coverages are. They have no idea what the what the reimbursement rates are going to be or anything that has to do with that particular coverage. So what we would like to see, or what House Bill 2386 does, is it requires transparency with regard to that in the contract between a dental provider and then that insurance carrier, so that then a dentist has the ability to opt out of that their name being sold to another third-party carrier, and they also have the ability then to just opt out one by one, or just right from the get-go say, no, I don't want you to be able to do that. So that's really Section 2. That's the first thing, network leasing. The other concept really is pretty simple also. It has to do with virtual credit card. That has to do with how a dentist is paid by a dental carrier. So Right now, for example, I mean, you think of, hey, a dentist is going to treat some patients, they're going to submit claims, and then you're going to get a payment in the mail from your dental carrier that you're in network with. Well, that's not always the way it happens. Sometimes that payment is made with a virtual credit card, so a dentist will submit a claim, and then that dental carrier will just fax some numbers to that dental carrier that then, the front office or the dentist will process, and then it'll go into their system. That sounds great. It sounds efficient. It is efficient. The problem is there's transaction fees associated with that. The dentists don't always know are even there. So kind of the scenario is this. You're a dentist out in a community. There's a hospital, a school district, a company that has a certain dental carrier for their employers or for their employees. So that dentist, of course, signs up. They become a network provider for that particular dental carrier so that they can provide coverage to those people in their community. They may negotiate something like a 70% UCR return, probably less than that, frankly, but let's say it's 70%. So now the patient comes, they get care, they're treated, the dentist turns in their claim on behalf of that patient and behalf of several patients that have that particular insurance. And now they get the reimbursement rate, or their reimbursement comes to them via virtual credit card. Their 70% reimbursement now becomes 65% because there could be as high as a 5% transaction fee, a processing fee on that. And to make matters worse, a lot of times that dental carrier, that insurance company, actually receives a commission on the overall transaction fee. So again, this bill, 2386, does require transparency. So that dental carrier is transparent with how they're going to pay, what those fees are, if they get fees back, and then allows a alternative method that is a transaction fee-free alternative method for payment, for reimbursement. So that's really what we're talking about with this bill, really those two issues that we're pursuing. Again, I want to thank Delta Dental of Kansas for kind of working with us on this, and at least at this point being supportive or neutral, anyway, where we are at this point in time. So I'm not sure, Madam Chair, how you want to handle questions. I know Dr. Jenkins and Dr. Rivas will have some things to add, and so I don't know if it would help to do at the end or now.
I think we'll take them at the end, and one of the things, committee, that I did kind of backwards is I'm going to go ahead and let the two dentists testify, and then we'll actually have our reviser maybe explain a little bit about the bill so that we know what all Kevin was talking about, if you haven't had a chance to read it. So
Thank you, Madam Chair.
that's bad on me. So you'd think I was a brand new chair.
Oh, I would never think that, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, on WebEx, we have Dr. Alan Rivas. Alan?
Yes, Chairman. Thank you very much. I come through. Okay. Chairman Landwehr, Vice Chair Dr. Epley, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of Kansas dentists and our insured patients. I'm Alan Rivas. I've been practicing dentistry in Atchison, Kansas for 37 years. Almost all of those years, I was the owner of a solo practice and later became a group practice. I'm the immediate past president of the Kansas Dental Association and a former Kansas State Dental Board member and president. I am here asking you for your support in passing House Bill 2586 favorably out of committee. I'll be addressing two sections of the bill today: network leasing, Section 2, and virtual credit cards, Section 4. Network leasing is a serious concern regarding patient fairness and transparency. In this situation, the insurance company that the participating dentist is contracted with can add additional networks without their knowledge. Often neither the patient or the dentist knows the benefits, the discounts, or anything about the plan. The dentist doesn't have an option to review or consent to the new network. It's unfair to patients that believe they have coverage and then they can't get answers from a faceless insurance company. So our dental staffs are tasked with trying to navigate through the confusion, but their hands are tied as well. This does not help the patients or our ability to help determine their benefits. Correcting this should not cost anyone, but it will bring fairness and transparency, which is what we all want for our patients. Please join the other 24 states that have already passed this legislation to stop this practice. Now I'd like to address the virtual credit card issue. In the past 37 years, I've watched the insurance write-offs in our practice increase from an average of 2 or 3% in 1984 to nearly 20% in 2019. We're small business owners. Margins are getting thinner. With interruptions and cost increases during the COVID pandemic, and now this additional fee, I feel the dentistry is under attack. The insurance companies first tell us to write off some of our fee, and sometimes we agree to that. Then they pay with a credit card that costs another 5% on the reduced fee. This a further reduction in our profitability. It only gets worse when you learn often that then they get a rebate from what they've charged you from the credit card company. This is not sustainable, nor is it fair to our offices. With today's technology, the simplicity of electronic claims and e-payments that are already in use, why is this even happening? Profits for the insurance company is all I can think of. Please, just mail me a check. Send me an e-payment. We're doing that already. Incurring a fee after already taking a reduced payment is very unfair. This change would not affect patient premiums, but it would return a fair reimbursement to the dentist. It would be far more transparent. Please join the other 16 states that have passed this legislation and support House Bill 2386. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rivas. Next, I have Dr. Jill Jenkins coming in on WebEx as well. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
All right. And I'd ask if you'd not read your testimony, kind of hit your highlights. I'd appreciate that.
Absolutely. It's my honor to represent the dentists in Kansas as the president of the Kansas Dental Association this year. I'd hoped to appear in front of the committee last week, but I'm grateful for the virtual accommodations that still allow me to present today. I'm a practicing dentist and small business owner in Kansas for almost 22 years and a specialist in pediatric dentistry in Shawnee for the last 17 of those years. I'd just like to give a personal explanation to the committee as to the relevance and necessity of your support for House Bill 2386. I have always been very clear about one thing, that the patient is the center of my business. But as both a business owner and practicing dentist, we have to balance those two hats, so to speak. The items discussed in House Bill 2386 are more than obstacles to the patient-doctor relationship. Thankfully, the simple changes presented in this bill can have a great impact on the dental patients of Kansas. So I'm going to give you a real-life example. Imagine owning a grocery store and agreeing to a coupon with your canned food supplier. You look at your margins and decide that, okay, I can support a buy 4 cans, get 1 free deal. Makes sense for your business. But you look at your month-end reports and all of a sudden realize that that coupon turned into 2 other canned goods supplier coupons, but their coupon was buy 4 cans, get 3 free. So without your knowledge or approval, the one coupon allowed that company to participate with another company that significantly discounted your fees without your knowledge or consent. In dentistry, dental insurance carriers are currently allowed to lease these existing provider networks to another third-party entity without the knowledge or permission of those providers, like myself. As such, I unwillingly can become a provider to other insurance companies whose policies I know nothing about. My real-life example is I may go through all the steps of welcoming a new family into my practice, spending significant time and resources to get and study their prior records, review their medical history, get all the medical consults I need, welcome and acclimate them to my family, to their family, to my practice, only to find out that they're being covered by an insurance company that I know nothing about and reimburses me for less than the cost it requires to serve this family. So it'll likely take me up to 90 days and many unplanned employee hours and expenses to contact this new insurance company to get out of a network that I never agreed to be in. All of the time, the family thinks that I'm the one to blame. They don't understand why. They found me on their list of providers. They did what they were supposed to do, and I just spent so much time demonstrating how much I care for their family. Am I just a greedy dentist who's all about the money? Back to our analogy, outside of my knowledge, the initial coupon that I agreed to turned into a coupon that is untenable to run a business. But to the layperson or patient, this is somehow the dentist's fault. Fortunately, the patient also suffers by being left to try to navigate the process of finding a new provider for their family and get the necessary treatment that was already diagnosed. House Bill 2386 provides transparency to this process by allowing me to opt out of a potential leasing contract while maintaining the coverage I agreed to with the original network, or by allowing a dentist to not participate in third-party access. Basically, if I agree to a buy four, get one free coupon, that agreement can't be altered without my permission. The other provision addresses how a dentist can be paid by an insurance carrier. We're all aware that accepting credit cards and the fees associated with that convenience is a necessary part of running a business. And the savvy business owner understands the convenience and quick turnaround of a credit card is worth accepting the percentage cost to the credit card processing companies. However, in dealing with insurance companies, we're already accepting a discounted fee, and so we have to then accept a charge on top of that, which just doesn't make sense. Instead of taking a calculated loss on a credit card payment from a patient as a point-of-sale convenience, dentists are being forced to take an unnecessary loss, sometimes up to an additional 5% than what was contractually agreed upon. Many young dentists are just happy to get paid, and they have no idea that there are other ways that they can be reimbursed just as quickly. I feel transparency in this process is important, and the virtual credit cards really are unnecessary. And back to the primary focus of how it affects the patient. I unknowingly actually had been accepting virtual credit card patients for years. I assumed my billing team knew what they were doing, and they just thought that accepting a virtual credit card was what was required. Should I have known better? Probably. But when we finally realized what was happening last year, we started calling insurance companies utilizing this payment method. To do so requires generally 30 to 60 minutes on hold to get in touch with someone just to be removed from the system. In my case, the virtual credit cards probably made the insurance companies tens of thousands of dollars in royalties from my practice alone and cost me personally over twice as much in unnecessary charges. Thankfully, we caught the problem before we had to send those extra costs onto the patient. House Bill 2386 simply says dentists must be aware of the payment options for reimbursement upfront and with transparency, instead of finding out after the fact and jumping through hours of administrative hoops as we had to do in my practice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's the end of the proponents that we had on House Bill 2386. This time I'll recognize William Sneed as a neutral on behalf of Delta Dental. Welcome to committee, William.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee. I am Bill Sneed here today representing Delta Dental of Kansas. I want to take this opportunity to thank the Kansas Dental Association and in particular Kevin for working with us. They reached out to us last fall on this and several other bills. And I think Kevin categorized the bill very succinctly for you. I think there was a good faith effort on both sides to try to come to an agreement on the prior approval language. They couldn't come to an agreement at the national level, and unfortunately, we couldn't come to an agreement here. So in order to keep the bill moving forward, Kevin's association was willing to agree to remove that. I think your revisor will know, but the definition, prior authorization on page 2, starting on line 29, and then section 3 would be the amendment. With that, we would then become neutral on the bill. We could spend a lot of time talking about the other two sections, but since we're neutral, I'll just back away and be happy to stand for any questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate that. The only other testimony I have is neutral written only by Terry Laughlin, Regional Vice President, State Relations, American Council of Life Insurers. Now, we're going to have our reviser kind of give us the highlights of this, and am I to understand that you may have an amendment for us? Okay. All right, go ahead. Chair recognizes Scott Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, members of the committee. House Bill 2386, as you've heard already, does primarily three things related to dental benefit plans and these contractual arrangements. The first is the access to, or access by a third party to a contracting entity's network. The bill would impose a number of requirements in order to grant a third party access to the provider network. First, whenever the contract is entered into, is sold, leased, or there are any material changes that are relevant to the arrangement, it would have to allow any provider to opt out of the third-party access or to contract directly with the health insurer that acquired the provider network. Additionally, there are requirements in the contract itself for these third-party access arrangements. Specifically, the contract has to state expressly that there is the agreement with a third party. It also has to require the third party to agree to comply with all of the terms of the contract, including the third party's obligation for patient steerage, requires the contracting entity to disclose and identify third parties that have access to the network, as well as publish that information on their websites, to identify the source of the discount on any remittance advices, and to notify the third party of the termination of a provider network agreement. As well as to terminate the discounted rate for the third party whenever as of the termination date of the provider network contract. Additionally, that section would provide that no provider will be bound to perform any dental services if a third party has violated any of those provisions. Madam Chair, Section 3 of the bill is the prior authorization portion. I can cover that at a high level if you would like, or I can skip over it since it. Okay. So that would be Section 3 of the bill. Section 4 of the bill is the payment restriction provisions that you've heard about. At a broad level, the requirement is that no dental benefit plan may impose restrictions on a dentist in which the only acceptable payment method is by a credit card. The bill would also impose certain requirements for disclosure and limitation of fees that are charged related to any virtual credit card payments. As well as a provision specific to the automated clearinghouse network and prohibiting fees solely based on the use of payments in that method, unless it has been unless the dentist has consented to that fee. The bill will take effect upon publication in the statute book, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
All right, committee, are there any questions of the reviser at this time? All right, seeing none, thank you, Scott. Oh, wait, did you have one? Representative Epley? Oh, okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Scott, I appreciate kind of that quick overview. I was curious, there's credit card fees typically in all transactions these days. And then is this a virtual fee that's charged on top of that because it's a dental service that's provided? Or can you explain the difference? It's like a double fee, it sounds like, for those services if they're rendered.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Representative, so I'm not sure how it actually works in practice. How the bill would address the issue is the disclosure of those fees that are associated with a particular payment method. As to whether or not they are separate, I couldn't really speak to that.
Okay, maybe we'll hear from a conferee. Thank you.
Are there any further questions right now for Reviser Abbott? All right, seeing none, thank you very much, Scott. Appreciate it. Okay, now we'll open it up to questions. I have Representative Barker. Just tell us who you want to visit with.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For Kevin, in your testimony, you mentioned, and you used the example of 7%, but it could be less than that. And from my experience, most credit cards charge about 3%.
Yeah.
And you were just using that as an example.
Well, what I was using, are you talking about the backside? What I was saying, or let's see, let me get my right testimony here, because I should have been 70%. What I was saying is that I was just talking about the process in which a dentist enters into an agreement with a dental carrier to be in-network, and that's usually a reimbursement rate of 70% of or less. The transaction fees can be as high as 5%, but I'm not suggesting they're all 5%. Some may be 3%.
Okay. And one follow-up, Madam Chair. On page 5, the last word in 38 and the sentence in 39 and 40. Have you got a copy of the bill?
I'm working on it right now, Mr. 39 and 40, okay.
Right. Where it says A, dentist is agent. On line 39, page 5.
I believe that's existing language,
Yeah, okay. I just want a clarification.
and I don't, a dentist agent may charge reasonable fees when transmitted.
So I'm assuming that dentist agent is the one that works for the dentist. They can charge a fee to,
To be quite honest with you, I don't know. It's under the it's under the definition of dental health plan. I would have to do a little research to understand exactly what that
I mean,
means.
if the insurance companies are charging a fee and then the dentist is charging a fee to go back, maybe they cancel each other out. I don't know. And that was the reason I had that question. If the dentist's agent can charge a fee for when he's transmitting or automatically clearing to a clearinghouse network payment related or to transaction management, both sides were charging a fee. If you could get back with us on that.
I will, because I honestly don't, I'm trying to think of I don't know an example or scenario that fits that. So let me look at that. Representative Parker.
Representing Blacks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question to Kevin. I appreciate your report. I guess I feel like part of our job is to support the patient in transparencies. And it seemed apparent that fees on this digital payment credit card are I assuming they are higher than what would be what I consider a real-time credit card that you carry in your wallet?
Might be the same.
Okay. If that's the case, and I understand you want transparency, and I certainly would as a business person, but if I walk in as a patient without an insurance card, and I assume I'll pay with a real time, which you're going to take a 2 or 3% reduction in your fees, are you willing to provide the same transparency to a client without insurance? The fact that as the same service, you're going to negotiate at a 70% rate, so I'm going to pay $1,000 for a crown, and somebody that's in the insurance is going to pay $7,000. Are you giving that? Were you willing to give that same transparency to your patients?
Well, I think that, I mean, you talk about just on the payment, you're talking the payment, not the transaction fee associated with that.
Right. See, I have no way.
Yeah, no, I know what you're discussing.
Of knowing what, and I feel somewhat without a mentor or somebody negotiating for me, I'm a little bit. Now, I know a bag of $100 bills goes a long ways in cash. Always has, always will. But sometimes, a lot of people don't exercise that right and do that ahead of time. So I think we need to be transparent to our patients too. The fact that, some of the ones out of network or out of the carrier are taking up slack for some of the insurance cover deal.
Well, I mean, there's no doubt that happens. Yeah. So when a dentist enters into an agreement with a dental carrier to be in network, that dentist is reimbursed at a rate less than what their established rates are. So if you come into a dental office or any medical office without insurance for that matter, you are going to pay a higher rate. There's no doubt about that.
But the average patient may not know that, my point. Thank you for that.
Committee, are there further questions on House Bill 2386? All right, seeing none, thank you very much, Kevin. Appreciate it. All right, committee, that will close the hearing on House Bill 2386. We will now open the hearing up on 2545, and we'll have Revisor Scott Abbott explain.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. House Bill 2545 also relates to dental benefit plans. The bill would amend the definition in current law of a covered service for purposes of dental benefit plans to specifically exclude from covered services any service or material that is covered or provided at a nominal or de minimis rate. For some context, another statute right immediately before the one that's amended by this bill provides that no dental benefit plan shall require a dentist to provide a service at a fee set by the insurer that is not a covered service. So that is the provision of law that this definition would interact with. This bill would also take effect upon publication in the statute book, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Revisor Abbott? All right, seeing none, thank you very much, Scott. All right, first conferee we have up for as proponent is Kevin Robertson, Executive Director of the Kansas Dental Association. Welcome back.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Kevin Robertson, Executive Director of the Kansas Dental Association, appearing in support of House Bill 2545. So House Bill 2545 is it was a bill back in 2019, which was very much compromised at that time. I'm going to tell you Blue Cross of Kansas City, Blue Cross of Kansas, and Delta Dental all were at that time on board with this particular bill. I guess we'll find out what happens today. So anyway, we're hopeful that this is a bill that we can move forward with as well. So again, it does have to do with non-covered services. So 41 states, including the state of Kansas, have a definition of a covered service with regard to a dental contract. So if a dental contract or a dental carrier with a contract for all the different treatment things. So you think of fillings and, again, extractions and crowns and all the things that could be covered in a dental plan or in your dental office. If the dental carrier does not cover that plan, then they are unable to establish the fee for that particular treatment. Okay, for that procedure. So what's happened, and that was put in place back in 2010. It's a bill that also, or a statute that's also in the optometric statutes as well. So it's not, again, not uncommon. But what has happened is some insurance carriers get around this particular provision in law by creating de minimis amounts or coverages within their contracts. So let's say you've got 100 possible dental treatments, and maybe a good portion of those have nice reimbursements back to that insured, to that patient. But then many of them may only be at $1 or $2 or something like that. And in that way, that dental carrier is able to establish then what that reimbursement will be, even though they really are not paying anything back to the insured patient. So this, by putting this language in, we are trying to close that loophole. So that we can move forward with allowing this to happen. Now, initially, when this bill was passed in 2010, the thought was that if you eliminate that, then it would, cause an incentive for dental carriers to cover more treatment, which I think probably has happened in some cases. However, we do know there has been this kind of loophole. And I do have some agreements to kind of bear that out that I'd be happy to share with the committee at some point if you'd like to see them.
Thank you, Kevin. We'll go through our conferees and then we'll come back to questions. Next, I have Dr. Alan Rivas.
Thank you, Chairman Landwehr, Vice Chair Dr. Eppley, and the committee. Again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to come back today to be able to testify because it could be in town. I'm here to ask for your support in passing House Bill 2545 favorably out of committee. After all these years, I thought I'd seen it all. Then along comes another twist for the dental insurance companies. The law passed in 2010 has a loophole that insurance companies are using unfairly. They cover many services at a fraction of a reasonable fee or de minimis coverage. The dentist is under contract with the insurance company. This practice creates a negative impact on the patient's care, the communication with the patient, and the choices they make for treatment. The IRS definition of de minimis benefit is one which its value and the frequency with which it's provided is so small to make accounting for it unreasonable and impractical. So unreasonable and impractical, I believe, are two good phrases for this. I believe it's exactly what this is. It's nothing more than an effort by the insurance company to control the fees and the services that are not in their plan. Patients and relationships The dentists in Kansas are committed to developing close and trusted relationships with their patients. They're more than a number to us. I do not believe that close and personal touch exists with the insurance company. Many of our insured patients do not understand their coverage and ask our staff for their help. The insurance confusion interferes with the doctor-patient relationship more than anything else in our practice. The de minimis fees on dental services do not help us with our patients. I do not believe that closing this loophole will suddenly create cash flow to the dentist, nor do I think any reasonable person should think it will suddenly drive up any cost to the insurance companies. What it will do is lessen the confusion, make it easier to help the patient and the dental staff understand the benefits. With the passage of legislation, our patients and our staff will have more transparency and fairness as they help navigate through dental coverage. Thank you very much.
All right, committee, next we have Dr. Jill Jenkins, virtually.
Thank you again. I'm a pediatric dentist practicing in Shawnee, Kansas, and also have the privilege of serving as the current president of the Kansas Dental Association. As a practicing dentist, I diagnose dental needs specific to each patient. My treatment recommendations are based on many factors, including a patient's cavity risk, gum health, overall individual health, grinding alignment, many other factors. And patients expect that their dentist will formulate a treatment plan specific to their dental needs, taking into account these many diagnostic factors. It then falls on the dentist to explain to the patients the associated costs for the recommended care, while taking into account the patient's insurance coverage or lack thereof. If a procedure is not covered by insurance, the patient understands it is their responsibility to pay for that service and can choose to move forward or not, as legislation passed in 2010 for non-covered services provides for. Obviously, the more covered services a dental plan has, the more attractive that plan seems in the marketplace right now. By finding and exploiting a loophole in the current law, insurance carriers are now advertising many more covered services by reimbursing dentists a very small, very minimal, called this de minimis fee for these previously not covered services. Essentially, this allows insurance carriers to technically abide by the language of the 2010 law, but in practice, now circumvents the intent and spirit of that law. By placing this ridiculous reimbursement fee, insurance companies can now claim the procedure is covered, and therefore are contractually able to set a top limit on what dentists can charge patients for a previously uncovered service. This top limit is often below what it costs the dentist to perform that procedure. How does this affect dentists? We're now backed into a corner with options to either one, provide the necessary services that will be reimbursed at fees below the cost of the materials and essentially lose money. For example, a surgical guide is highly recommended for certain dental procedures, but de minimis coverage in one insurance plan places a top end of $100, when the lab fees top $300 to fabricate the surgical guide. The other option then is to decide to eliminate that treatment option when presenting the option to the patient, or the third option is just get fed up and drop the insurance plan altogether. How does this affect the patient? The patient now effectively has lost the right to opt out of this service because insurance coverage in a de minimis fashion has taken that option out of the dentist toolkit and stripped the patient of the ability to choose to pay out of pocket for a non-covered service, even if they wanted to. Or the worst case scenario, a patient's trusted dentist will no longer accept their insurance because of these de minimis fees, and they're forced to pay completely out-of-network fees or find a new provider. The practice harms the dentist-patient relationship by forcing the dentist to make decisions based on insurance limitations that may not always be in the best interest of the patient, which causes distrust and potentially jeopardizes a valued relationship. If you agree with the intent of the 2010 legislation, then you should agree with House Bill 2545, which seeks to honor the ability for dentists to propose all treatment plan options to a patient and provide the patient with fully transparent costs, allowing them to make a decision based on their true needs and not options limited by an insurance carrier's de minimis loophole. Thank you.
All right, next committee, we have an opponent. We have Larry Ann Brown on behalf of Cigna. Welcome to committee, Larry Ann.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I am Larry Ann Brown. I'm here today on behalf of Cigna. Cigna is a global health services company dedicated to improving the health and well-being of our over 180 million customers worldwide and thousands of Kansans. You have our written comments In general, we oppose the bill because this bill is doing what the legislature is finding itself doing in many instances lately, which is getting in the middle of contracts between two private parties. I will tell you that back in 2019, my plan, Cigna, was one of the companies that did not agree to the compromise in this language. We still don't agree with the compromise that has been supposedly worked out between others. I can tell you this, that I am completely confused by what the bill means, what it does, what the definition of de minimis is. The last person who testified talked about de minimis being, or the person before, about de minimis being defined by the FDA. This person talks about de minimis being up to $100. In summary, I think that Cigna is just concerned that all this bill is doing is taking what is considered a non-covered service or material and taking it from the pocket of the consumer, your constituent, and putting it into the pocket of the dentist. And with that, I'll be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you. We have one other conferee. Neutral, we have William Sneed on behalf of Delta Dental of Kansas. Welcome to committee again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, I am Bill Sneed, here representing Delta Dental of Kansas. As stated earlier, my company, or my client, was part of the group in 2019 that worked on the compromise language. As such, when the KDA informed us that they were going to reintroduce it this year, in the form as it left the House committee in 2019, we agreed to be neutral as we were in 2019. So again, I want to thank the KDA and in particular Kevin for reaching out to us and working on this prior to coming to the legislature. And with that, I'm happy to stand for questions at the appropriate time.
All right, thank you. That concludes our conferees, so now we'll open it up to questions. I have Representative Barker.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. This would be for Larry Ann Brown. If she would return to the podium. Thank you. I'm going to be honest, I think I'm a little confused. When you were talking about de minimis, what is that? It's trivial. It's not to be considered. So what you're telling me is they're charging for something that shouldn't be charged for. Because, in law, it's too trivial or minor to merit consideration. So why are we arguing about this if it's not big enough to merit consideration?
I would agree with you. I think it should be left up to the parties that are part of the contract, the dentist and the insurance company. And if the dentist doesn't agree to the terms of the contract, they don't have to contract with the insurance company.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to figure out we don't have a definition, and I know what the law definition is. It's insignificant, and it shouldn't be charged. Anything. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're like a walking dictionary. We love that about you. No, that's a good thing. Representative Eppley.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I guess I'd ask Kevin to come back and help give us some guidance on this. My memory, and it's been 3 years, and of course that's crystal clear, but it was moving forward, and I thought we had agreed to language, and I thought we had all the parties together on this, and then suddenly it just came to a halt. Can you refresh my memory on what happened in 19 and why we didn't get this out of committee?
We did get it out of committee. It passed the House. It did not move further in the Senate. It was late in the session. It didn't move any further at that time. So it did come out of the House.
Vote, do you remember? I could look it up, I guess, but roughly?
80s to 40s, something like that. I mean, that's maybe 90s to 30s. I mean, I don't recall the exact vote. So it did move. So the bill back in 2019 did include two other provisions, and to be honest with you, it was changing the definition of non-covered service. There was actually some maximum benefit language that was going to be put in there, and there was something else. So the other two pieces of that change in the definition of non-covered services, the KDA backed off of, and then those other insurance companies, including Delta, agreed that the de minimis language was appropriate, or they could be neutral with that. Really, to answer the question with regard to trivial, I would agree de minimis coverage is trivial, but what happens is an insurance carrier in their contract, so like for example, this is a fee schedule for a particular dental insurance contract, okay? And this is a 2019 PPO schedule by this particular insurance company. But it covers things, or periodic oral exam, $30. I mean, things that you would expect coverage for an insurance carrier to have. But then it rolls down, and there's several things that it covers at $2 or $1 or $3. Trivial reimbursement. So in the case of the insurance carrier, they're going to say, hey, we covered that particular procedure. Therefore, we control what you can charge for that, even though they're really paying a very trivial or a de minimis amount on that coverage back to that insured patient. They're insured. So what this bill does is it amends the definition. It says that if an insurance carrier covers a procedure at a de minimis amount, that does not mean it's covered. It's not covered if it's only covered at a de minimis amount. So that's kind of what we're doing here with this bill.
Representative Eppley.
Just for clarity, and just to segue back to Representative Barker, who has just an encyclopedia brain, it's just amazing. But on this section, when you refer to the word de minimis, are you talking about the reimbursement's de minimis, but you're saying that the service is not negligible or trivial and should be charged more? Is that correct?
No, yeah, it's not about the service that's provided by the dentist. It's about the reimbursement rate in the contract that's provided by the insurance carrier.
Well, the insurance carrier regards it as a de minimis charge. I'm just saying the service that the dentist renders, they want to charge more for and not be locked in at a de minimis rate.
Correct.
It's not a negligible service. I want to make sure the committee understands, our committee, the proponents, Dr. Rivas and Dr. Jenkins, may want to speak to this, but the services that they're provided typically would be reimbursed a lot more than de minimis reimbursement by insurance. Is that correct?
That is correct.
But when they're locked into an insurance plan, the insurance plan takes some of those services and calls them, quote, de minimis reimbursements.
Well, they're called covered, but they're covered by a de minimis reimbursement.
Okay, well, we're saying the same thing. Thank you very much.
I have Representative Barker, and then we'll come back here to Representative Kelly.
Now, isn't this a contract between a dentist and a provider, and they go into it with their eyes wide open, and if they've agreed to take certain benefits, they've agreed to take certain benefits or get paid a certain amount for a certain procedure. So, I mean, these are contracts. Two parties have agreed to have a meeting of the minds, and they both sign on to it, and they have to wait until they can either find another carrier that may want to pay them more or less, but no one's forcing them to do this.
Well, I would agree that no one's forcing any carrier or any provider to sign the contract. I definitely would agree with that. I would, though, tell you that there is really not a negotiation process. It is take it or leave it is the process by which it's followed.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Kelly.
Kevin, thanks. My question would be, like the services that are covered at a de minimis level, they could be and probably are covered by other carriers at a higher level. Would that be right? That not everyone's going to be de minimis on this charge. Some of them are going to have them covered, or they're not going to have them covered at all.
Well, yeah, that's correct. Of course, I want to make sure I understand your question, Representative Kelly. I mean, a patient is going to have one coverage, not another coverage. So, yeah, there may be another, that provider may have other patients with another dental carrier that might cover those at a covered rate, if you will, as opposed to a de minimis rate.
Right. Now, are those de minimis amounts, are they there when the contract's signed, or are there any that change during the contract period where they add a service?
If you don't mind, Madam Chair, I'd like to ask our two providers that are online if they could answer that question.
I'd love to speak to it. Many times you sign a contract, you develop a patient base, you see these patients and families for 5 or 10 years, and then all of a sudden rates change and they drop, and all of a sudden this was a non-covered service. And so you could advise the patient that we need to do this, and this additional service is out of pocket if you choose to do that. That would cover our fees. And all of a sudden, the plan changes, your fees drop 5% across the board, and all of a sudden you get these $3, $5 reimbursements. And so now it does not cover the cost of the materials that I need for that service. So again, I'm left with the decision. Do I not even put this option on the table now and give the patient less quality care than I would? But I can't offer it as a service and break even on it anymore with these de minimis coverage amounts. Does that help and make sense?
It does. Do those amounts, can they change during the term of the contract where they could take a non-covered service and add it as a covered service, but at a low amount after
time.
you've signed it? Okay.
Committee, further questions?
Schedule when that contract renews. Again, the trick for that being that you've established a history with the patients that take that insurance. And so it becomes more than just, great, I'll drop this insurance and go out of network. That sounds easy, but these patients and families are relying on you. So you'll take a reduced 5% across the board fee in your fees. And that's just part of the deal. That's part of the contract. But when previously non-covered fees are now covered, so to speak, at $1, $2, $3, that's when you have to weigh the balance on what's fair. And it ends up making it unfair to the patient in the end, not to padding my pockets for the reimbursement. It takes the choice for the patient on whether they can have the service or not, because it does not cover, $3 does not cover the cost of my materials, let alone my auxiliary staff and everything else involved in those procedures.
Yeah. Can I add something to that?
Yes.
This is Dr. Rivas. I would add to that if you go back to the previous bill we testified on with network leasing. So even if we have a good contract here and we like the fee schedule, when the network leasing happens, we may be brought into a network that has de minimis coverages. So it never ends. These contracts renew automatically every year. And sometimes you don't get a fee schedule, or you get a partial. So it's not really been a completely open, transparent process. Thank you.
All right, any further questions on House Bill 2545? Seeing none, that'll close the hearing on House Bill 2545. Now, committee will direct our attention to House Bill 2617, and we'll have Revisor Scott Abbott explain.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. House Bill 2617 addresses vital statistics record and specifically the disclosure of vital statistics records. The bill would amend current law to provide that the state registrar shall permit inspection of records or issue a copy of records concerning a deceased person to an immediate family member of that deceased person. It also clarifies that nothing in this bill would prevent a person who has been adopted from requesting and receiving those records, not be prohibited on the basis that they were adopted. Madam Chair, the bill will take effect upon publication in the statute book, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Committee, are there questions for Revisor Abbott? Scott, one that I have is, would this then pertain to, as I was reading through, I was a little bit unclear, would it pertain then to all adoptions? The records could be requested?
I'm not sure I'm following. So current law doesn't really offer this level of specificity as to who may request and be given vital statistics records. It has some general guidance about the registrar may issue these documents to a person who has direct interest in the matter, or it's necessary to resolve property rights or some other civil action. So the bill would allow a person to request those records for somebody that they are a direct relative of who is deceased, whether they are adopted or it is their birth family.
All right, thank you very much. Any further questions? Representative Barker.
You're getting down here. As used in this section, the immediate family members means father, mother, step-parents, child. That would be the child of the decedent?
Yes.
Okay. Stepchild of the decedent.
Yes.
Spouse or grandparents. Now, presently, on folks that were adopted, and I'm going to go back a few years before you were born, adoptions were sealed. And the reason they did that is because a lot of people would voluntarily relinquish their child, and they were promised some amount of secrecy for that would not be known. And for years, this court struggled with this about releasing records when they would come in. And we've made some exceptions, particularly for medical. The medical history of the biological parents. We would allow, if they could show that they had a disease that was possibly passed on from the parents, okay? So now we're going to let anybody go in there, or not anybody, but the ones you've named here, to look at their adoption records? Is that what this does?
So, Madam Chair, Representative, I am not 100% sure, and I know Jenna's online. She may be able to offer some clarification. I'm not sure if there would be any interaction in adoption law or the revised Kansas Code for Care of Children that might interact with this that would speak to that point as far as, allowing the release of those records at any time. What this bill is addressing is, treating an adoptive relationship different from a
Right, but it opens the door.
Yes.
Okay, just want to see about that. And you think the next person may be able to clarify that?
Well, my colleague Jenna is online. She was more involved with the drafting of this bill. I don't know if she has anything to add.
Jenna, do you have something at this time?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will just make sure I have the answer to that correct, and then I'll give a response.
All right, thank you. Are there any further questions of Revisor Abbott at this time? All right, seeing none, thank you, Scott. All right, committee, the first conferee we have up today is a proponent, Candace Brasic. Did I pronounce that correctly? Yes. All right, welcome to committee.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of HB 2617 today. After retiring in 2020, I finally had time to start my family history research and was eager to apply for membership in the Daughters of the American Revolution organization. When I discovered a Mayflower ancestor, I was interested in possibly also pursuing joining the Mayflower Society. In the process of applying for various vital statistics records, I discovered that in Kansas, I was unable to obtain some of those records because my birth parents had divorced when I was a youngster, and when my mother remarried, I was adopted by her second husband when I was 9 years old, and my original birth certificate was sealed and a revised birth certificate prepared naming my adoptive father. As a result, I have not been allowed to get the vital statistics records from Kansas for my paternal birth father and his side of the family. I was able to get his death certificate from the state of California. I am not a lawyer, but in reading KSA 652422D, it seems that the purpose was to protect the privacy of birth parents when a child had been adopted and was unaware of the identity of the birth parents, and thus had no relationship with that side of the family. In my case, even after the divorce and subsequent adoption, I continued to have a relationship with my birth father's family. I would ask that you support amending KSA 652422D to allow an adopted person to inspect and be issued records of an immediate family member who is deceased, including father, mother, step-parent, child, stepchild, sibling, spouse, grandparent, great-grandparent, or great-great-grandparent. Thank you for your time and attention, and I stand for questions.
All right, thank you. We'll go through our other conferees first.
Thank you.
All right, committee, we have a proponent written only, Julie Duran, and that's in your packet. And then we have a neutral, Kay Hogg. Did I pronounce that correctly? Close. Yeah, I don't want to be close. I want to be on. And she's the State Register for Vital Statistics and the Director of Bureau Epidemiology and Public Health Informatics, Kansas Department of Health and Environment. Oh my gosh, that was an alphabet.
I'm glad you said it. Now I don't have to do that.
So give me the pronunciation of your name, please.
Haug.
Haug, thank
Haug,
you. Welcome to
yes.
committee.
So thank you. Thank you, Chairman Landwehr and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to testify today on House Bill 2617. House Bill 2617 amends 652422D by allowing adopted individuals to obtain vital records of certificates of deceased biological immediate family members. It also establishes a process for all individuals to inspect vital records of immediate family members who are deceased. So what I'd like to do is just spend a little time going over how the current law works, just to ensure we understand that piece of it. So our current law allows individuals, including adopted individuals 18 and older, to obtain legal records of deceased immediate family members and legal records from after the adoption, but not those family members where the legal ties were severed, unless the adoptee is able to prove a direct interest. And what we mean by that is perhaps the adoptee had a relationship with the biological father, and maybe they were had a bank account together. And so when they come to us, they are able to produce that paperwork and say, my biological father passed away, I have a direct interest, we had a joint bank account. In that case, we are able to release that record to that individual. This statute change would affect the confidentiality of immediate biological family members from before the adoption. And by allowing an adoptee to obtain these vital records, it could potentially initiate possible unwanted contact with those immediate biological family members. So currently, if someone comes to us and they are trying to seek a certificate of this nature, we would, and they're not able to provide that direct interest, we would refer them to DCF, to the adoption agency. We'd ask, do you have a relationship with the biological family where they could request the certificate on your behalf? And then they could obtain the certificate in that manner. The thing that's good by them using someone like DCF or the adoption agency is they have someone then working as that mediator between the two parties. We also have just something we want to bring up is that any release of these types of records could create privacy issues and possible fraud concerns. And if the bill does pass, we would ask that there be some language put into it that would help to ensure that the records that are sealed or suppressed by coroners, courts, law enforcement, anything that where there might be some kind of criminal case, to ensure that those records continue to be suppressed and that we don't get put in a position where we might have to release those. It's also assumed with this bill that all individuals would be able to inspect vital records by coming into our office. And that's not a current practice that people come in and inspect records. So if we establish something like this, we would need to establish an area where this would occur, have some type of computer system set up, so in fact this could occur. We do believe it would impact the amount of certificates that are ordered from our office, and so there is a financial impact to us, but it also impacts two other groups that do get dollars off of some of our particular certificates. And that's the Family and Children Investment Fund and the Child Coroner Autopsy Fund. So we just wanted to point those two out in addition. I thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony today, and I am available for questions.
All right, thank you very much. Committee, do we have questions for any of our conferees today? Representative Barker.
Oh, for me?
Petitioners, particularly children that were adopted. Particularly folks that were adopted, they don't know their biological parents. They can petition the court. There is a legal mechanism to go to court, make a finding, particularly, usually it has to do with medical issues. And the court can open those records up to a limited basis and allow them to get copies of those to take to their doctors or who's ever treating them. But this bill would open it up where they can actually come to your office and look at all those records. Is that correct?
That's our understanding
That's
of
my
what we
understanding
read.
of reading the bill.
Yes, and you are correct that we do receive court orders that would allow us to release a record.
So the lady who testified earlier has a possibility of going to court and getting a judge, if she presents a good case, that he could open those records up and get that document for her. And rather than trying to get this bill, which opens it up for everyone. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Committee, further questions? Representative Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Could we hear from Jenna Moyer, who wrote this bill?
Jenna? Jenna, are you still with us?
Yes, Madam Chair. What, I guess,
What's the question, Representative Ellis, for Jenna?
yes.
I do believe she said she narrowly crafted this, so it would only be specific situation. What is her interpretation of how this would affect the bill?
Does that make sense, Jenna?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, that does, excuse me, make sense. And I did attempt to craft this bill as narrowly as I could, given the request that was made of me. And I can't speak with certainty as to the sealing or unsealing of adoption records, because this was supposed to be tailored just to those records from the Vital Statistics Office. My understanding would be if you were requesting one of those records as an adoptive child, I'm not exactly sure how you would be requesting an adoptive record to be unsealed. Like, how would you request a birth certificate of a parent if you're an adoptive child and you didn't know the parent's name? And so I don't know how exactly a back door would be opened. But I will defer to the expertise of the Vital Statistics representative who actually deals with this more on a day-to-day basis.
Kay, would you like to respond to that, please?
Yeah, so just to make sure I understand the question that I'm to be answering, this is if somebody is of legal age and how they would obtain their original birth certificate if they were adopted? Is that what I'm answering, or did I miss that?
Give that to her. Give that to Kay. This would be the testimony that's from the individual that I believe Representative Ellis requested this bill for, so maybe that gives you a better clarity on what's trying to be achieved. So the question becomes, I think today, is this bill necessary? Because I'm kind of with a couple of the other committee members. It may open it bigger than what we want to open this up. So we're probably coming to you and asking, how can we address the situation she's faced with, perhaps without legislation?
So if I understood correctly when she was speaking, I believe that she had commented that she had maintained a relationship with the biological parent who is no longer the legal parent. And so the easiest thing in my mind would be to reach out to the biological family and ask them to request that certificate on her behalf. We see that happen frequently with people that come into our office. If there's a good relationship there, you know, they pay the money to that person, they order it for them and hand it off. So that would be the easiest situation. And then if that doesn't work, then the court order.
Now I'm going to ask Candace if you would come up and can you, after what you heard that, can you elaborate for us?
And to address this last comment, I'm the last one other than my brother living on that side of the family. My father had one sister. His dad died when he was 10 months old. His mother died in 1970. It would not have occurred to me to ask at that time, when you died, is it okay if I get your death certificate? And my brother has no interest in, and he wouldn't have the authority to give me that permission either. And as far as the court proceeding, I did go ahead and file pro se in Jefferson County and ask for these records against the Department of Health and Environment. This filing fee was $195, and that I could do that. We know of some other cases in Jefferson County where this will probably come up. And now it won't be a surprise because people hopefully can ask ahead of time, but we'll see what the judge says in this case. I had a relationship. I have most of, they didn't have a lot, but I've got most of what they had when they were alive, military records, but not the birth and death certificates.
All right.
So,
Representative Epley, who's your question for? For her.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, Candace, thank you for being up here to testify. I thought you or someone mentioned this was standard operating procedure in several other states. Do you know those states where its records release are in this methodology, or would this be unique to Kansas?
I think there's a wide variety. My birth father died in California, and it was simply a matter of making the request and sending the check. And I would give it to you probably if you asked for it. Missouri, I requested my maternal grandmother's death certificate, and same thing, so they don't have the restrictions on that. I don't know, it's a state-by-state thing apparently.
But you were, in California, you were asking for a death certificate.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, and I think
And I've
that's
got
a
that.
different situation than when you get into adoption records. And I think going back with what Representative Barker was saying earlier is if you go back several years, most adoptions were sealed. And there wasn't always a guarantee that a father was ever even listed on the original birth certificate. And there was good reason maybe for some of those to be sealed. So that I can see the death certificate being a different issue, so.
Well, yeah, and I do have, the birth certificate from Cushing Memorial Hospital when I was born, and my baptism, many things with his name on them, and then I'm in a relationship with the family, so my situation might be unique from others, but I do know of some others where the father has died, and
So
if they just-
you have your original birth certificate with his name on it?
I have the one from Cushing Memorial Hospital, and now I have the Department of Health let me have my original one had been sealed, because my adoptive birth certificate is dated 1963 when I was 9 years old. My mom remarried, and he raised us. I loved this man. But I had a relationship with both of them. But I have that birth certificate showing everything the same. I was born in 1954. This is signed and sealed by the Department of Health in 1963.
Okay, but you don't have the one of your original birth?
I have finally got a copy of that birth certificate from my original birth.
Okay.
So
Then I guess I'm kind of lost on what we're looking for.
I now need for Mayflower and DAR, things like that, you need birth certificates, death certificates, marriage certificates for your family. I mean, I have all his military records and a lot of those kind of records, but those are requirements for some of that genealogy stuff.
Okay. Thank you. Committee, are there further questions? All right, committee, seeing none, thank you very much for being here
for your
today.
time.
That closes the hearing on House Bill 2617, and that will conclude the hearing business that we have today. I might give you a heads up. Tomorrow we do have we're going to do a rehearing on the bill, and I should know the number off the top of my head, but I don't. I just call it 988. But we'll do the hearing on the 988 suicide prevention hotline again tomorrow. My intentions is to work that on Wednesday. On Thursday will be the bill for the CanCare extension. Keep your ears open. We may be working Friday. I heard there might be a couple bills moving our way that need to be heard, not worked, but heard on Friday. Monday is our last day, isn't that right, Dave? In order for this committee to meet prior to turnaround. So if there's any business that's going to get out of this committee, it has to happen Monday. So just keep your ears open for a possible meeting Friday. Plan on meeting on Monday. And if you've got questions or you've got amendments and you feel comfortable sharing, we would appreciate that. There will be amendments on the 988 legislation, and we'll share those tomorrow as we go through the hearing on that bill. So committee, we're adjourned.